In the Kherson region, near the Armyansk checkpoint, a camouflage camera was discovered recording the movements of units of the Russian armed forces. This is not CGI, it's not AI, it's not a scene from an SF movie. This is Kyiv on 8th of July. This is why Russia is a terrorist state. Russia's war effort in Ukraine is still hampered by lying commanders, corrupt bureaucrats, an ineffective military-industrial complex, a lack of defenses against drones, and chronic shortages of men and equipment, according to a Russian journalist and military commentator. Vladislav Shurygin, an ultranationalist journalist and commentator on Russian military affairs, has written a lengthy complaint on his Telegram channel about the state of the Russian war effort. He says it is leading to massive and unnecessary losses on the Russian side. After castigating the indifference of officials and the man on the street, who he says is waiting for friend Trump to give the order to end the war, he complains that any initiative, any business drowns without a trace in the bureaucratic swamp. The average official, he says, doesn't give a damn about anything except his own pocket, his own chair, and the will of his superior. What official in our country thinks about the country? Country is something abstract. But the office, the boss, and corporate solidarity are everything. The Russian military's culture of lying in military reports has led to the mass slaughter of Russian soldiers, according to Shurygin. 2.5 years into the war, and at the front lies and show-offs are still blooming like opium poppies in a Tajik vegetable garden. Some gentlemen commanders are already receiving their third medal for the villages and townships taken on paper. And they get away with it. How many dozens of times has Krinky been declared captured and cleared of the enemy? A full-fledged commander, let's not say which troops, personally reported to the president of Russia about its capture back in the spring. And the point is, it was only 3 weeks ago that fighters on the front line confirmed that the enemy is no longer in Krinky. How many times was Robotyne liberated? How many times have they reported that Klishchivka is ours 150%? But the worst thing is that then, in these taken places of Krinky, Klishchivka, Robotyne, hundreds of Russian men are driven forward to slaughter, so that the boss who reports the capture, who has already drilled a hole for the medal on his uniform, can cover his ass. This problem of institutionalized lying in the Russian military is well known and has been the cause of many failures on the battlefield. Shurygin complains that our regiments are ground down to zero in a week in senseless head-on assaults, and without any result. Because there is no electronic warfare, no drones, and the ammunition is limited. And how many regiments do we have with a full list of personnel? But as soon as the command comes to attack, to go forward, and the task is assigned to a full-blooded regiment, it suddenly turns out that a quarter of the payroll is dead souls, non-existent people. Some are on the run, some have not returned from vacation, and some have generally paid their way out of the front and are safely sitting in the rear. And then there are no further miracles. The regiment is marking time, senselessly losing people and equipment. As a result, it exposes the flanks of its more successful neighbors and, from a beautifully conceived offensive, it turns out to be a furious offensive with a week-long battle for the forester's hut and huge losses. Ukraine's omnipresent kamikaze, reconnaissance, and long-range drones are another critical problem, which Shurygin says that Russia is failing to counter or imitate effectively. For a whole year, drones have been keeping the infantry from raising their heads, chasing every cart in a swarm. And for a whole year, we have been hearing stories from military officials that, any minute now, soon, this problem will be solved. But so far at the front, they see people's electronic warfare, products made by enthusiasts, far more often than effective products of the state military-industrial complex. According to Shurygin, the Russian war effort is heavily reliant on volunteers and self-purchased supplies. He writes that cars, motorbikes, quad bikes, and other means of transport are being purchased for the front, along with many other kinds of equipment. Up to the present moment, most of the drone detectors are bought by fighters with their own money. There is still a continuous stream of volunteer cars going to the front, carrying sights, thermal imagers, Mavic, drones, camouflage nets, first aid kits, generators, and a whole list of desperately needed equipment to the front line. Even now, in folk workshops, assembly of drones is going on day and night. The military-industrial complex has failed to produce the kind of drones that are actually needed, according to Shurigin, and has focused instead on producing expensive, unwanted hardware. In 29 months of war, state corporations have not created a single transport drone capable of delivering supplies to the front lines and picking up the wounded. Enthusiasts did, even flying hexacopters, but there's no money to produce them. But we have seen a lot of stories with clumsy, slow-moving machine gun modules, which were obsolete in the era of Dmitry Rogozin's reign in the military-industrial complex, when they actually appeared, costing many millions and needed by no one. Shurigin laments the lack of defenses against Ukrainian long-range drones, which he says have long been the scourge of border and non-border regions, wrecking oil depots and industrial facilities every day. He asks why there are no airborne early warning balloons. He also queries the lack of activity by the Russian Air Force against the long-range drone threat and the lack of protective facilities at Russian airfields, which has enabled Ukraine to destroy aircraft on the ground. We have been saying for 2 years that the war requires the restoration of air defense forces, the return of fighter aviation to air defense, to no avail. The commander-in-chief of the air defense forces is deaf. So what about the fact that every month the number of enemy drones grows, but our Kinzhals, hypersonic missiles, are accurate and our missiles are fast? For 2 years we have been saying that our airfields need protective structures, shelters for aircraft and main airfield facilities. And what? Nothing. Are we waiting for another UAV attack on another airfield with an epic video from the Ukrainians of burning Russian bombers? He calls the current moment a very dangerous point in the war, when Russia will either mobilize and crush the enemy or fall into a bottomless swamp of truce due to the weight of our systemic problems, bureaucratic sluggishness, indifference, and apathy.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you want to support Warthog Defense, please become our member and get early access to new videos, exclusive members-only videos, and become administrator in comment section. The membership link is in the description.
Every day. We had a guy last week, it's 6 rescues in 6 days. You know, he's doing the job every day.